Hey there, internet friends! It's me, Brandon Hart, the Eco Extruder, and I just wanted to say a couple words here before we jump right into part 5 of the BIG-60 printer build. As you may have recalled from part 4, I cut that one short, even though it was still an hour long, because it was just quite frankly too long. So this is sort of part 4B, I guess you could say, but I'm gonna go ahead and call it part 5 of the build series. In this video, I finish up the actual machine itself and start getting into the secondary hot end, putting the enclosure panels on, things like that, and again, just kind of buttoning everything up. I'll do another video after this one where we'll kind of go through calibration, first prints, some initial thoughts, that kind of stuff. So this is the final actual build video for the BIG-60, and without much further ado, here you go. Future, I guess it would be past Brandon will take it away from here. Go. Okay, we're back. I got everything spaced out. You can see I got the big 4 kilogram 3D fuel Workday PLA spools on there. And I made sure that it will actually work from both directions as well. So I can have 2 4 kilogram spools on here, one feeding each one of the nozzles, no problem. So that is excellent. Other than that, everything is now tightened up. Everything is good to go. The only thing that's not tightened up are all of these panels here, because I was told not to in the instructions. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. What do you say we put some enclosures on this thing? Some enclosure panels. I like putting on big pieces. It makes a bigger difference before and after. So this will be fun. Yeah. Okay, well, you know how I made a point of saying that I got these spool holders in such a place that I could put 4 kilogram spools on either side? Yeah, well, as soon as I put this panel on here for the enclosure, turns out that the part where it attaches to the top 4040 profile is in the way. It basically is right here. And so what we're supposed to do is actually take this entire spool mount and slide it over so that it sits right about here and would be inside of each one of these tabs that holds it on the top. I wasn't cool with that, so I kind of thought about it a little bit and searched around in some of the supplies that we got, and I found some M5 16 millimeter screws, so longer than the 12 millimeter ones that we're supposed to be using here. And I used those to fasten this this side of the spool holder through the acrylic tab. I did use the nylon washer on the back side of the spool mount, so it is between the spool mount and the acrylic. So hopefully that'll keep it from shattering, because I could see with quite a bit of force on these spool holders that actually causing some cracking. And then just to make it so that these were relatively parallel, perpendicular to the bar, parallel to each other, I took the 3 large fender washers that were used for the big upright and pulled those off and put 3 of them underneath each one of these inside screws so that it would kind of level itself out a little bit more. We'll see if that works. I think it might crack these tabs. It's kind of thin acrylic already. And when we start hanging spools on here, I'm afraid that it's going to put a lot of pressure on the acrylic, but I need to be able to use larger spools. I mean, this is a big machine and it's just going to chew through 1 kilogram spools like nothing. So I need those big 4 kilogram, 3 kilogram, 5 kilogram spools to be able to work on this thing. And I couldn't really come up with a better option. I looked at some of these screws thinking maybe that would work, but the spacing isn't right here and that's too wide over there. So that's all I got. That's about my only option. So hopefully this works. It just goes to show, I mean, I made a big deal about the getting them spaced out just right, being able to put the 4 kilogram spool on there, and of course that bit me. But I think we're good. I think we're good now. So let's keep going. Okay, thoughts time. um, got all the panels on. So I am keeping the paper, whatever you call this, protective paper on the acrylic for now on most parts. I didn't do it on the bottom because I thought that might be an extra pain to try to remove. But for the most part, in all the other places, it's still on there. I also have not yet tightened up any of the screws holding the acrylic or any of the support frame pieces either, because once I get everything kind of done, I want to arrange them all and make sure they all fit in the right way. Did kind of have a little bit of an extra pain trying to get this in the right spot. As you may have seen, I was kind of messing around with all the cables and the cords and had to move this and bring the right amount of cables out. I do remember something about this supposed to be like 24 inches from something, and I didn't really ever measure that, so maybe that part's on me. But got that going. Also, initially when I got this set up, the door was hitting the corner of this screen, so I just sort of pulled the whole frame, all these pieces out, the hinge mounts, all out as far as it would go, and now it just barely clears. So we're good there. Other things. In the instructions, it never actually says to put these screws in to hold these black pieces on. I assume that was just an oversight, but yeah, that part is actually missing, which is kind of strange. These doors, I mean, there is like almost no clearance here at the tops and bottoms, so it is very well sealed around there. I actually think it could have had a little bit more space between all these pieces, just so that things could have a little bit more room to move. Things like this that are mounted sideways tend to over time sort of droop and drop, so I imagine it will probably start catching here at the bottom after a while. The other thing was this heater box, this electronics box, was actually was pushed right up against this frame piece, which is the way it's supposed to be, except that when it's that way, it doesn't allow this door to close all the way. This acrylic is 5mm thick, and this piece right here, this piece of aluminum, I'm sure is something like 3. And so when it was closing, it would sort of get hung up here and not really be able to close all the way. And so that was a problem. I ended up taking the whole case out, adding 2 nylon washers on the back sides of this aluminum bracket on these 4 screws that hold it on, and that just set it back far enough that now closes with no problem. So again, not part of the instructions. Hopefully I didn't need those 8 nylon washers, but I've got them on there now, and everything's working great. The other thing is, I'm not a big fan of how these magnets are supposed to hold the door closed. So rather than putting these little magnets here, these neodymium magnets, and then having nuts sticking out of the fronts that are supposed to touch the nuts that are sticking out of the backs of these, just didn't really like that idea. So instead, I had one of these magnets available and handy, and it makes it nice and flush, and so it's a much better connection right now. With the other one, if I were to close it a little too fast, the whole thing would just pop right back off the magnet, whereas now everything closes and latches pretty decently. So there's that. I'm not terribly a big fan of this idea. There are holes drilled at the top, just like there are at the bottom, for what appears to be a doorstop and magnets, but of course there's no place to mount those because the linear rail for the x-axis is right on that 40/40 extrusion, so there's no place to put it, but those holes are still there, and this whole thing kind of is unsupported and sort of swings. I don't know, just a minor thing, but I wish that was more secure, more solid, but it'll work just fine. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So a few little, improv things going off script a little bit in a couple spots, but I did that just to make it better. So that is, I think, most everything on the main part of the printer. Now we move on to making the top cover, and it's going to be a lot of these 2020 extrusions that we'll be working with up here to make that. So more Lego erector set. I think it's more like erector sets. Anyway, that's what's coming. Let's get going. Let's get this thing assembled. I feel like the instructions, somebody may have been in a bit of a hurry at this point to get kind of the instructions finished up and wrapped up. A lot of it seems like it's missing a lot of detail that it has had up until now. For example, the next step here, it says to connect these at the back and middle of the enclosure. That's the whole instruction. Doesn't say what kind of screws to use. Doesn't say to use these T-nuts. It just says connect it. So, I mean, I can reasonably put together the fact that I'm supposed to use the brackets. Which direction they're supposed to point. Which screw. I assume it's these little 8mm M5 screws. I assume I don't use the washers. I mean, there are some assumptions I can make, but it just sort of, everything was spelled out previously. So, I don't know. Maybe they just figure by this point in the process, you're probably got it figured out. You should be able to take it on your own from here. But yeah, anyway, just thought I'd point that out. All right, let's do this. Do you notice anything funky here? Let me give you a hint. This one right here is the wrong one. That needs to be swapped out. So I said in the unboxing that none of the acrylic panels that were in that wooden box got damaged. I have to update that statement. There is a chunk missing out of this corner right here. Let me get up closer and show you. So there's a chunk missing right there. Here's the piece that popped out. And it popped out during shipping. I actually found this little piece in the box ahead of time. So that's the piece that goes there. Then I looked for the piece that it was missing from, and it turns out it's this back panel. I don't think it's a big deal. This actually will go down behind the back. So this is really just an attachment tab. So I don't think it'll be a big problem, but there is one piece that got broken. There are two of these 2020 covers that go on the ends here, but this is the back, and there are only two covers. So I haven't been told to put them on the back, and my assumption is that's because they actually are just going to go on the front, and the back will be uncovered. I mean, would have been a nice touch to put them on the back too. Can't imagine these are too expensive. But yeah, just two of them, so we'll just put them on the front. Again, I haven't really been told to put these on yet, but we're gonna. It doesn't really say where to put these tubes, but there's this slot right here in the middle that seems to be about the same size as the PTFE, so maybe I'll try that. That's it! It's done! It is built! This is the last part of what they call part 2 in the instructions for building this thing, which pretty much means that it is built now. There's a part 3, but that's pretty much just all like calibration and dialing it in and testing it and all that kind of stuff, which is very important, but is not really part of building the thing. It is now built. Yeah, pretty darn happy with how this thing is looking. Definitely had some issues along the way, but most of those issues are relatively minor. Did encounter a problem with the top cover here. This front panel is actually too big on the bottom half. It's fine up top, but this bottom edge here and all the holes that are associated with it are about 3 mil too far, which is about the same thickness as the acrylic itself. So I think somehow something got misinterpreted or misunderstood, that this was not going to be overlapping. I don't know. But anyway, no big deal. That just means that right now the handle won't fit on there. I'll need to get a replacement piece of acrylic. I don't see a way to modify this that makes sense. But with that said, everything else looking pretty good. There's a lot of static electricity built up on the acrylic at the moment from taking all the paper off. But check it out. Huh? Yeah. One thing I noticed is there are these cutouts right here. See that? And those appear to be about the same size as these spool holders. So I might have to do that. We'll see what how this works out. But I talked earlier about the fact that I'm kind of overlapping with these acrylic tabs right here, and I don't want that to crack. Even with that overlapping, I'm still not sure I can get a full 4 kilogram spool on both sides. So maybe if I move those here, the suspiciously located blank area that's not covered by acrylic on both sides, I think that's probably what I'll end up doing. But for now, this is what it looks like. A lot of ideas for things I'd like to do for upgrades, but the nice thing about all of this is mechanically, this thing is solid and well built, well designed. Everything seems very well thought out. So I'm pretty pleased with that. The upgrades and stuff I'd like to do would be things like changing out the extruders or integrating active heaters into the build chamber. I'm not totally certain how well this little 3 mil thin acrylic is going to hold the heat in, but we'll see about that. I did end up swapping out, you guys didn't see this, but I ended up swapping out the link in the drag chain for that long one in the back and adding it up into the short one up top. So that helps. It still doesn't reach all the way to the end. So during the testing and calibration phase, I may end up pulling another one of those links and putting it up into this one, but I'm glad I did it for the one already. And like I said, probably do it again for the next one. Yeah, I think the PTFE tubes are excessively long, but hey, easier to cut them down than to have them too short. This is it, it's here. I've built it. I'm super excited about it. I want to get printing, I want to get it dialed in, I want to get testing with it. I don't know what a video is going to look like in terms of calibration, so I guess stay tuned for that. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and that way you'll find out. But calibration is sort of one of those kind of tedious and boring things to do, let alone to watch. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe it'll be cool. Still loving these wheels. I mean, I can basically dance with this thing now. I mean, how cool is that? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I dig it. I really do. All right, that's enough. So again, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying this. There's probably somewhere between 10 and 12 hours of, actually probably 12 or more hours of raw footage that went into this build, and that's how much time has gone into building it. So hopefully this was all very cleverly edited to reduce that massive amount of time down into something that's actually watchable. Definitely had my share of technical issues with the video recording this time. You may have noticed there was a bit of a jump here at the end where I was working on the top cover and then all of a sudden it's done. And that's simply because the SD card filled up and I wasn't aware. So lots of problems, audio issues, etc. Still working through it. I'm still new at this. We're gonna figure it out. It's gonna be great. But yeah. So anyway, until next time, I'm the Eco Extruder, Brandon Hart. Please subscribe. Please leave your comments. Let me know what you think about the machine in all its glory. I will see you next time. And thank you very much, very, very much for watching. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks again. See ya.